Yo guys, Punkrat another video. Punkrat is appropriate. I've been on an absolute gluttonous binge lately and I need to stop, but who cares about me? You guys don't care about that. You're here for the delicious information bombs that I'm about to drop on you. So a couple days ago, I posted a video titled How to Get Molten Core Ready, which is of course highly relevant to you guys right now as you venture to max level. Now in that piece, I asked if you guys wanted me to make a comprehensive Molten Core boss guide. You guys kept asking for it, and as always, ask and you shall receive, my friends. Keep in mind that I'm going to be skipping the whole Hydraxian Waterlord stuff since I've covered that in 3 previous videos. I'll link the last Molten Core prep guide that I made in the description if you guys want to see that topic covered, but this guide is going to be solely focused on boss mechanics. So without further ado, friends, here's my comprehensive guide to Molten Core bosses. Let's get into it. Alright, so here we go. We got the first boss. His name is Luciferon, but it's not just Luciferon. He actually comes with 2 adds that follow him as he paths through the corridor. Luciferon is a really simple boss fight. It's kind of hard to wipe. It can happen, but if healers are on point or if dispellers are on point, it's quite easy. So the first thing that you need to know is that the adds need to die first, and they need to die fast. It's kind of similar to any boss fight where it's more than one enemy target, where the pull is a bit messy, and once you kill a couple of them or once you get through the initial pull and everything's stabilized, it gets a little bit easier. So he's got 2 Flamewaker protectors, and both of these guys actually have their own unique abilities. The first of which is Cleave, so the off tanks need to make sure that they're facing these guys away from the melee and away from the raid in general. And in the early days when your gear is not so great, you probably don't want to stack your tanks together. Once the raid is quite decked out and your healers can just heal through all of the damage, you can just stack all 3 of the mobs together and it's no problem. Cleave them all down, Blade Flurry, and it's a super easy fight. But right now, when your healers go out of mana in 2 seconds and they're stuck trying to dispel the entire time, it's probably a better idea to separate the adds away from Luciferon. The second ability that the adds have is called Dominate Mind, and it's exactly what you think it is. Every now and then, they'll just mind control one of your raid members. All you have to do is control that said raid member. So the idea is to kill the adds really fast. So make sure that you guys are popping your cooldowns and absolutely blasting during phase 1. Kill Skull, then kill X, and then it's time to get on the boss. Now Luciferon himself is, again, pretty simple. The only real mechanic that you have to deal with are the 2 debuffs that he places on your raid. One of them's a curse and one of them's a magic ability. The magic ability is called Impending Doom, and all it does is inflict 2000 damage to the target that it's applied to after 10 seconds. So it basically ticks for 10 seconds on that target and then does a chunk of damage. Paladins and priests need to be dispelling this as soon as possible off the entire raid. Now Luciferon's curse gets applied onto the whole raid as well, and it increases the cost of their abilities by 100%. It's imperative that all mages and druids decurse this immediately because it's going to run your healers and mages and casters out of mana immediately if every spell that they cast is 100% mana, so double the cost. And of course, focus on the healers and then focus on the casters first. So that's pretty much the whole fight. Little tips that I'd say for this guy is make sure that your priests put Prayer of Shadow Protection on the entire raid, because Impending Doom does shadow damage and having the extra resistance could help. You could also use Greater Shadow Protection potions to absorb some of the shadow damage, and another thing that's really interesting is keeping Restorative Potion onto yourself, which will tick for 30 seconds and constantly dispel you so you don't have to rely on a healer. So that's pretty much it. Kill the adds, kill the boss, dispel. Okay, so the second boss, which is basically in the exact same room just at the end of the tunnel, is called Magmadar, and this guy is just a massive core hound. The first ability that we're going to talk about is Frenzy, which is I guess like kind of a softened rage where he goes into a frenzied state and starts attacking for 150% increased attack speed. Hunters need to use an ability called Tranquilizing Shot. This is not a baseline ability that hunters have. In fact, it drops off the first boss Luciferon. It's a tome. So if it's your first time doing it, make sure that your hunter gets the tome for Tranquilizing Shot, and every single time he casts Frenzy, make sure the hunter is tranquilizing the actual ability off of the boss, negating that frenzied state. Also be careful with how you set up loot threshold. I think that's what bugged it for my raid last time, where no one was able to see it. So the tome of Tranquilizing Shot dropped and we weren't actually able to pick it up. The next ability is called Lava Bomb, and this is basically a bomb that gets thrown at a specific raid member and the floor ignites in flame. If you walk through that flame, you get a dot on you that ticks for a big chunk of damage. For For the most part, it's just don't stand and fire. Get out of it as soon as possible. But it's not really as simple as that. He's also got an ability called Panic, which is an AoE fear around him, which could fear you into the lava bomb itself and cause you to start taking damage. So make sure that you have Tremor Totem down if you're on Horde side, make sure it's next to the tank so he doesn't get feared as well, and on Alliance side, just keep Fear Ward on your main tank. And also stay spread out so that you're not getting hit in the same bomb. If it gets targeted onto someone and you're right next to them, you're also going to get the dot onto yourself. The most important thing, however, is if you're a ranged caster or a hunter, or healers as well, keep in mind that you can outrange the fear, so you want to stay absolutely max range at all times, and if the tank moves, make sure that you're backing up and always staying at max range. That way the fear will go off as you're seeing on the screen here, and it's not even going to affect you because you're out of range. That's pretty much it. Just don't stand in fire, try to negate the fears, spread out, and outrange the fear. Now the third boss is called Gehennis, and he's basically like a hybrid between Magmadar and Luciferon, or at least the fight sort of plays out in that way. He's another Flame Waker boss, and he comes with 2 adds, so you're going to tackle that pretty much the exact same way that you tackled it against Luciferon, where you're going to be cleaving the adds down and then hitting the boss. So his adds don't have a mind control and they don't have a cleave. Instead, what they have is an AoE stun ability, a strike, and a sunder. So they're going to be hitting your off tank specifically quite hard, and they're going to be stunning all melee around them, including the off tanks. This means your off tanks are going to be getting stunned quite often, so careful with the aggro that you're pulling so you don't pull off of the stunned tank. Another little trick is to use a free action potion, and that'll make all of your melee and your tanks, your off tanks, immune to the stun, and they can just keep going through it. But it's pretty simple, they're not so difficult. Just kill both of the adds, Skull, X, and then get on the boss. Now Gehennis himself has 2 really important abilities. The first one is Gehennis' Curse. It's casted on all raid members similar to Luciferon, and it reduces incoming healing by 75%. The way that you want to tackle this is immediately decurse the main tank and off tanks first at all times, and make sure that you're keeping them up. Then you can start decursing the rest of the raid, so decurse the tanks and then decurse the raid. Now the next ability is called Rain of Fire, and this is sort of similar, I guess, to the lava bomb mechanic that we saw in Magmadar. He's going to target a specific raid member, only one, and cast a Rain of Fire above them. When he casts the Rain of Fire, run out of it. It's pretty much that simple. And a really important thing to note is you want to stay away from other people, so just spread out and use the room around you. That way you have a lesser chance of getting caught in the Rain of Fire if you're not within a specific pack of people. Unless you're me and you're super unlucky, and you see on the screen right here, I'm by myself and it triggers on me. But that's also good as well because it's only targeted on me and I'm not near anyone else, so I'm not hitting a bunch of other people with the Rain of Fire once it procs on me. Okay, so the 4th boss in Molten Core is named Gar. This is a relatively easy fight, but it can get messy, and it's probably the first boss fight within Molten Core that might give your raid a bit of difficulty. So you have Gar, and then you have, I think it's about 8 or 9 adds that are next to him. There's a couple ways that you can tackle this. You can banish a bunch of the adds and then have off tanks tank the smaller guys that aren't banished away and just nuke Gar, or you can do the more common strategy, which is actually killing each add one by one and then killing Gar. So there's a couple things to understand when killing these adds. The first is that they explode once they die. So the tank needs to make sure that he's tanking them away from the raid, and the melee needs to make sure that before the add actually dies, they need to run out of range so they don't get knocked up in the air and blasted for a bunch of damage and then take fall damage. The warlocks have one job: assign them a banish and just keep the target banished. So you're going to be killing the adds one by one because of the explode mechanic, constantly paying attention. Okay, kill Skull, kill X, kill Square, whatever it is. Once all of the adds are dead, it's time to go on Gar. Or if you see that your healers are going out of mana, your tanks may be struggling to survive, you might want to keep the last 2 or 3 adds banished and just switch to Gar early, kill him, and then deal with the banished targets once you've stabilized. Gar himself doesn't really have interesting mechanics. All he has is a slow and basically an AoE purge, so he takes buffs away from the raid on interval. This means that you don't have to worry about rebuffing during the fight. If you have might on yourself, it's gonna get taken off. No reason to put it back up. It's just gonna waste your mana because it'll get stripped in a couple seconds. And the next one is Magma Shackles. Magma Shackles basically is like a AoE Earthbind totem, I guess you could say. It just slows people around Gar. So pretty simple fight. Banish, kill the adds one one by one, don't get caught in the eruption, and then kill Gar. So the next boss is Baron Geddon. You want to pull him to the spot that you see on the clip right here, and then you want to have your raid stack about 30 yards away, all on top of each other. So Baron's got a couple different abilities. The first one that we're going to cover is called Inferno, and it's essentially a hellfire that he casts around himself. I think it's about a 25-yard range, probably closer to around 20-yard range, and melee cannot stand in the Inferno. Every single time it goes off, they need to run out, and then once it's done, go back in. Now the next ability is called Ignite Mana, and this is a magic debuff that gets applied raid-wide, so on every single raid member. It needs to be dispelled immediately, and of course you have to focus on mana users first, specifically healers. Priests and paladins need to be dispelling like absolute maniacs. Now why you have to dispel it so fast is because it burns your mana. Every single tick you're losing 400 of it, and if your healers go it's bad news for you. So the most important thing is to dispel incredibly quickly. If your raid's on point, you can get rid of them really quick. If the Ignite Manas are sticking around for too long, it's probably because your healers are slacking, so make sure that people are dispelling real fast. Another thing that you can do is, like we said on the first boss, you can use Restorative Potion. So people in the raid can have Restorative Potion applied onto themselves, and for 30 seconds on interval, it'll be dispelling magic debuffs that get applied to them. Now the next ability is a classic. It's called Living Bomb, and it gets targeted onto one specific raid member. That raid member will have a skull planted on their head. You have to run out of range of the entire raid. If not, you're going to explode everyone and basically wipe the raid. So every single time you get the Living Bomb, make sure you guys are saying in comms, X person, move out. Although you should pay attention without people telling you that you have to leave, know that you have the bomb, and get out of the raid. So it's just a balancing act between melee getting out of the Inferno, staying 30-yard range and dispelling, and getting the bomb out of the raid. Now this next fight is not necessarily the hardest fight, but it's almost always messy. We've got Shazra, who's the next Flame Waker boss in the raid. So there's two strategies for setting up your raid here. The first is splitting up your raid into 3 different groups, so like a 3-point triangle, I guess, in a certain way. You want to split your healers equally, and then you want to have an off tank in every single group. The main tank will be tanking Shazra about, again, probably around 25-30 yards away in the center of that sort of triangle, little 3-point dot that you have set up. And the second approach is to set your raid basically in a semicircle or in a half circle, and then splitting up your healers equally around that circle and having one off tank split throughout. So the first thing that we're going to cover is the counterspell. I think about every 15 seconds or so, the boss is going to cast an AoE counterspell that affects everyone in the raid. You want to make sure that you're not just blindly casting throughout the entire fight, because you're going to get locked out for 10 seconds if you get hit by it. This means what you should be doing is when you know it's about to come, stop casting, use some instacast, renews, rejuvenations, whatever it is, wait for the counterspell to go through, then start casting a heal after that, because you have a 15-second window of just free casting, or I'd say probably use around 12 seconds to 13 seconds of that window just to be safe and give yourself the buffer between the next CS. Now the reason you want to structure your raid in this position is because Shazra has a blink ability where he's just going to blink to a random raid member. Every single time he does that, he drops threat. This is why we have the off tank split up between the raid. That way if he blinks to one side, you have an off tank there to taunt him because he drops aggro off the blink and then bring him back to the center. The next two abilities are Shazra's Curse and Arcane Explosion. He's constantly casting Arcane Explosion, and when he blinks into the raid, he's still gonna be casting it again. For the most part, it doesn't do that much damage, but if you have Shazra's Curse applied onto yourself, it makes you take 100% increased magic damage. So that means he's gonna blink into the raid, Arcane Explosion, and it's gonna absolutely obliterate you. So mages and druids need to make sure that they're decursing people once again. And the last ability that he's got is called Deaden Magic, and it's basically a buff that he puts onto himself that reduces incoming caster damage by 50%. This is something that shamans can purge and priests can dispel, so make sure that you guys are dispelling that at all times. Now, as we stated, the boss is also casting Arcane Explosions over and over again. This means that you don't want melee to be within his radius at all. So for the most part, the melee is just going to stay ranged at all times and use their bow and basically just shoot him over and over again. That's it. I mean, it sounds pretty boring, but that's your job as melee. Although, keep in mind, once it gets to about 20%, I'd say send the whole melee group in and just start executing him over and over again and just finish him off. Next up, we've got Golemag. Now, this guy is an absolute joke, so we're going to cover him super fast. It's basically a tank and spank, so you need 3 tanks. 2 of them are going to be tanking the core ragers next to him, and they basically just sit there and tank the adds, and the healers are going to be healing them. You want to assign a couple healers to each off tank, and those adds, you don't have to kill them at all. They despawn after you kill the boss. In fact, you can't kill them, they'll just keep healing up. Then you have the main tank who's tanking Golemag. There's really only one mechanic that you have to deal with, and that's called Magma Splash. So melees that are attacking the boss are going to be applying a debuff onto themselves when they're auto attacking him, and it basically just puts a stacking dot onto you for all of the auto attacks that you apply onto the boss. If you stack this up too high, you're just going to essentially kill yourself or run your healers out of mana. It applies to the tank and it also applies to the melee DPS. So what you want to be doing is stack up to maybe 5 or 6 stacks and then just stop attacking. You could also do a tank swap for the tanks, where once the main tank has too many stacks, another one comes in, taunts off of him, and you just keep doing a swap. It's really simple. It almost plays out like a tank and spank. It's super easy. Just be careful of the Magma Splash that's stacking up on your melee. Next up is the final Flamewaker boss before Major Domo Executus. His name is Sulfuron, and he comes, again, you guessed it, with a bunch of adds, just like all the other ones, except he has 4 of them instead of 2. Now this whole fight is all about the adds. They're Flamewaker priests, meaning that they're all healing and they heal each other. They have an ability called Dark Mending. There's a couple different ways to deal with this. Adept guilds will probably put a rogue on each one of them and just interrupt the heals. Kill Skull, kill X, get through them one by one. But this can be risky if you're relying on another person's ability to not screw up, I guess. If you're in a pug or if you're in a guild where you're just learning the fight for the first time, I'd suggest this strategy because it's pretty much absolutely foolproof. So what you're going to want to do is send your main tank in and then assign 1 tank to each add. You're going to mark a skull, an X to whatever pretty much. The skull, however, you want a hunter to aim shot it off the pole and have the off tank who's waiting to tank the skull behind that hunter around the corner. You're going to pull the skull all the way back away from the other priests to that tank who's going to tank that mob out of line of sight around the corner all the way at the back of the room. This means that the other Flamewaker priests cannot heal the skull. So if you have the skull all the way down there around the corner, you can just drop it really quick and not have to worry about the heals. Then what you could do is get the X and drag it out to that same spot, kill it out of LOS, and then just keep doing that over and over again. Although once you get down to 2 Flamewaker priests, it's pretty easy. Put 1 rogue on the other and 1 rogue on the main target and just interrupt the heals and just kill them. It's super simple. Now Sulfuron has this Hand of Ragnaros ability, Inspire. It's really nothing to deal with. You just have to have your best geared main tank tanking him away from the Flamewaker priests, assign a couple healers onto him, and then assign a couple healers onto the off tanks as they're tanking the Flamewaker priests just slightly away from where Sulfuron is being tanked by the main tank. It's super simple. The most important thing is to just deal with the heals in whatever strategy you think is comfortable for you. And the priests have Immolate and Shadow Word Pains, so just make sure that you're dispelling those as a priest or as a paladin. Alright, so next we've got Major Domo Executus, who's the second to last boss, and you can only unlock him after you've doused all of the flames. So if you're wondering why he's not there, it's because you haven't doused all the flames yet. He's another Flamewaker boss, except he's the legendary Flamewaker boss, and instead of having 2 adds or 4 adds, he's got 8 of them. 4 of them are Flamewaker elites, and then 4 of them are Flamewaker healers. The healers can be crowd controlled, so you want to have them all polymorphed by individual mages. The elites cannot be crowd controlled, so these need to be tanked by the off tanks. Just like all the other Flamewaker bosses, you want to have them marked from skull to X to whatever it is, so you're killing them one by one. The main tank is going to be tanking Major Domo Executus away from the whole cluster that's going on with all of the elites and healers. The mages need to polymorph right off the pull. It needs to be really fast, and they also need to constantly be re-upping their polymorphs even before it hits the end duration, before the polymorph breaks. The reason why this is super important is because every now and then Major Domo Executus is going to be casting Magic Reflection onto all of his adds, and that applies to the polymorph target, so you will not be able to re-polymorph since it's just going to reflect it back onto you. And of course he's putting it on all of the adds, so don't cast a fireball on one of the Flamewaker elites and have it reflect back onto your face and basically one-shot yourself. So pay attention to the magic reflection. He also has Aegis of Ragnaros, which is a shield that he puts on his adds, and it also reflects a little bit of damage. And then you've got Damage Shield, which just reflects 100 damage to any creature that strikes that minion. So this fight is all about the pull. It's all about stabilizing and getting through those Flamewaker elites one by one. So you want to be hitting Skull and popping all of your cooldowns to kill Skull and X as fast as possible, alleviating some pressure. An alternative strategy that some people use, especially in cruddy gear, is instead of killing every single Flamewaker elite, what you'll do is you'll have a tank on Skull and you'll have a tank on X, and then you might have a hunter on the other two Flamewaker elites to just distracting shot them, aspect of the cheetah, and just kite them as far away as possible. Once you get through Skull and X, then they can feign death and those Flamewaker elites will come back and you can drop them, just buying you some time to stabilize, get through the two Flamewakers, and you're good to go. Now once you've killed all the Flamewaker elites, it's time to kill the polymorphs. You go through them one by one, super simple, and then once you've killed all 8 adds, Majordomo Executus is pretty much done. So you don't have to kill all of the adds and then kill Majordomo. Once you've killed the adds, the encounter is over. And one more ability to deal with, which is really not that big of a deal, Majordomo has a spell called Teleport, where he'll teleport a random raid member into the center pit. So you see this sort of magma barbecue in the middle, he'll teleport you onto it and just make sure you run out really fast. If you're a mage, blink, or pretty much whatever. If you're a warrior, intercept out. So that's pretty much Majordomo. It's a council fight that you have to nail the pull, stabilize, and then once you get through it and once you've stabilized a little bit, you're good to go. All right, now we've got the crown jewel himself, Ragnaros, the final boss. The first thing that you need to know is that you actually need 2 tanks, or 1 tank and a quasi tank. The reason why this is important is because there always needs to be someone in melee range. If no one's within Ragnaros's melee range, he starts casting this ability called Magma Blast, and this is basically a fireball that if it hits you, it's gonna one-shot you no matter what. It does 6,000 damage baseline. So every now and then there's gonna be an ability called Wrath of Ragnaros, and it's an AoE knockback. Your melee is gonna be avoiding it, meaning every single time Wrath of Ragnaros is gonna go off, your melee is gonna run out of range, the knockback's gonna go through, and then they'll come back in. And that's pretty much what the melee are doing the entire time, is just playing that balancing act between going in and staying out to avoid that knockback. But your main tank is gonna get hit by it unless he resists it due to his increased fire resistance from his gear. But if your main tank gets knocked back, you need someone else to come in and sort of take the reins for a little bit until your main tank is able to recover from the knockback and come back in. So that's pretty much the first phase. What's also important during that phase, however, is splitting up your raid. So the boss room is kind of structured, I guess, in like a cinnamon roll. And there's these little walls every now and then that can cover the backside. So you want to have all of your healers spread out throughout the entire spot, but most of them you want them near the melee and tank group. And when it comes to the range group, you want them spread out all across that cinnamon roll structure wherever there's a wall. The reason why you want them actually next to the wall is because he has this blast ability that can target someone outside and it'll AoE knock back everyone within range of that blast. So you want people to spread out and you want them to have their back to one of those walls so that if they get knocked back, it just knocks them into the wall. So that's pretty much the first phase. You want to spread out around the room. Your melee needs to play the balancing act between Wrath of Ragnaros to not get knocked out, and the main tank also needs to be wary of that knockback with someone else who's coming in every single time he does get successfully knocked back when he's not resisting it. The first phase lasts 3 minutes. So after 3 minutes of the encounter, Ragnaros is going to submerge. So if you haven't killed him before the first submerge, which is after 3 minutes, you have to deal with his second phase. And the second phase is him submerging into the ground. And then I think 8 Sons of Flames will spawn. Now the Sons of Flames, you want to banish a couple of them. And the ones that aren't banished, you want to group them up all into the center and have your whole raid sort of congregate. So initially you were spread out through the cinnamon roll. Now you're all going to congregate and stack up for the Sons of Flames. Now is time to pop abilities like Blade Flurry. So I wouldn't personally cast Blade Flurry on the first phase if you're expecting to deal with the Son of Flames. Keep it to deal with the adds. It's time to group them all up, AoE them, blast them out, and then trigger Ragnaros to re-emerge from his submerged state. Now one thing that you can do to buy extra time here is keep one of them banished for a while. He'll stay submerged for a couple minutes. So if you want to kill 7 of the Suns and keep one of them banished and then use the extra little time that you have while he's submerged to bandage up, maybe regen some mana and just relax a little bit and sort of stabilize, you can do that. The most important thing that you want to do at the start of the submerge phase before the adds come out is pop a greater fire protection potion. So all of the adds, all the Sons of Flames are doing fire damage and they do a ton of it. It's quite easy to wipe at this point of the fight. So right as he submerges, make sure you pop a fire protection potion and also pop one before the fight actually starts. That way you can get double value, so get it on yourself, get the cooldown going, and then once it's time for the submerge phase, pop another one. Now after all the Sons of Flames are dead, he comes back up and it's rinse and repeat, you're back to the first phase again. Melee needs to play the balancing act, tank same thing, healers and casters need to go back to their original positions, and you just gotta finish them off. The fight itself is not super difficult, I'd say it's more of a gear check and a consumable check than anything else. So make sure you're prepared, stay spread out, pop your greater fire protection potions, don't get hit by wrath, and just hard nuke him down. Alright friends, that's the video. I know Molten Core isn't the most complicated raid out there, but there's still some little nuance here and there that can help you with your raid experience. I tried to point out everything that I remember or that I'm aware of from back in my days of raid leading, so hopefully there's some useful information packed in this overview. I wish you guys good luck in your classic raiding endeavors, and with this guide you should be able to comfortably enter Ragnaros' lair, and of course may your rolls be graced by the touch of a loon. Now if you guys like my content and want to see more videos like this, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, of course you know the drill, soldiers. Make sure to hit that notification bell to be notified every single time I post a new video straight out of the render oven. And with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.